Hi, welcome to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at Diablo8Gamers.com. I am your host, Flux, and joining me on the show today is Rankil.
Greetings.
And Sentarius.
Hi.
Or is it Sentarius?
Sentarius.
There's an extra I in there
There's an
somewhere.
I.
And we are recording this on Monday night, and we are giving up our 50% community experience buff to talk to you on the podcast for an hour. So, we'd be like 5 levels higher if not for this, but, we'll get to that later, I guess. We are going to touch on the first few days of Diablo 3 version 2 and all the big changes, the sudden start of that, getting into things about class changes and cool items we're finding, and the new clan system, and probably some other topics as well. But first of all, some of us anyway, were happily banging along in the Reaper of Souls beta. You were in that, Rankil.
Yep.
You were not Sentarius,
I was
right?
not. I was on the PTR.
Okay, get off the podcast. No, I'm kidding. Actually, PTR is good. You can give us reflections on that versus version 3. They've taken some things out, such as legendary materials. Where'd they all go? But anyway, so we were banging along happily on the PTR and in the Reaper of Souls beta, and then, what was it, Friday? I think it was Friday, right? And all of a sudden it's like, hey, the beta's ending in 4 hours. And we're like, what?
Actually, I think it was on Monday because the
last Monday,
was it?
right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then Tuesday was the patch for it. They were just like, oh, by the way, 2.0, or they didn't even say that 2.0 was coming out. They just said they were shutting down the servers. And
yeah, just suddenly they had said nothing over the weekend, and there was no notice. I mean, usually they give you weeks of notice for the beta's closed.
Josh tweeted something along the lines of a couple weeks, and that was on a Thursday. So I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be the following week of what it was. And then when they shut down, I'm like, well, we're going to have a week of no beta, and then they're going to open up, and do 2.0, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, 2.0 tomorrow. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so were you surprised by that, Sentarius? I mean, I was playing frantically the last day, trying to get a little bit of fun in on I had just gotten a couple of new items in the beta. I was all happy to use, and I was like, oh. Well, you were on the PTR. Had you anything cool that you lost, or what was going on?
I didn't have anything really cool that I dropped. Some of my characters suddenly felt weaker back on live, but and as you alluded to earlier, some things changed anyway between the PTR and live. But what threw me was remembering the different builds I had tried out. Like, I had a vague plan that I was going to go back sometime before the PTR shut down and make sure I could remember what skills I had been enjoying. And then the PTR was gone.
Did you have a chance to get on that afternoon before it went away? Because it was kind of in the middle of the day in the U.S.
No, yeah, it was in the middle of the day. And I'm on the East Coast, so I'm 3 hours later, and it was, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was shutting down at 5 p.m. West Coast. So easily, if you're in the West Coast, you might have found out it was shutting down at 1. You're at work until 5, and it's already gone by then when you get home. So you had no chance to even give your characters a kiss goodbye. At least on the East Coast, you could have had dinner and then played for 5 minutes.
Yeah, but like 5 minutes. And then on the forum, everybody was speculating because they said the servers were going to be down Tuesday, but like you said, they didn't say that the patch was going to be that week. We all didn't know if we were going to be playing version 2 the next day or not for a week or even 2 weeks. And then it was the next day, which I guess is a good way to be surprised.
Yeah, I had thought all along they were not going to launch, version 2 and Loot 2.0 until right before the auction house shut down. That was kind of our expectation.
Which brings
and then we got on the PTR and the beta and saw everything was soulbound. So I'm like, why are they shutting down the auction house at all? Because who cares? You can't trade anyway. But so how was it? How was your transition, Rankil? You were in the beta and then suddenly you weren't.
Yeah, it was kind of, well, actually what I ended up doing, because I was more or less planning to try and get this sort of, I was selling out all my gear on my current characters, and then what I was going to do is going to build up Archon set and then 6 property pieces just to get like a baseline and rebuild back up. But then pretty much when they had that, I was able to actually get on, but then I just, since I knew that servers were going down in 2 hours, I just reset my entire account of all the stuff that I had from the beta. I was just like, well, it's gone anyway. And I started crafting things to make sure to see if stuff was actually going to work. And then I started getting into a panic mode of buying a bunch of low-level crafting materials because I hadn't really planned on doing it before. But it was, it was like getting stuff like the normal Nightmare Hell crafting materials because those upgraded to the Inferno ones. And then doing that, I bought a bunch of gems and some other things to try and do, the auction house tycoon. And I don't know, I ended up making like 400 million gold basically on the first day of it, flipping a bunch of items. So it was pretty good. But I would have liked a little bit more heads up notice on it to buy a few more things to flip. But there's still some things in the economy right now with like the Loot 2.0 and the auction house. It's just like I don't even know what's going on. It's just so crazy.
Well,
Yeah, I had a note for that for a later topic, but get into that now a little bit. I mean, the gem prices are insane. I mean, gems are going for 30K a piece for flawless squares in hardcore on Europe and America.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's
And
so.
I thought they would all be worthless by now. Everyone knows that Marquise drop in Reaper of Souls, right?
I think it's because, well, first of all, I don't know if everybody knows Marquise drop in Reaper of Souls, but I think it's because the upgrade costs are so cheap. Like where before, it's so the economy, people are used to, who haven't been on the beta, are used to paying a lot to get their higher level gems. So now the cost is just being shifted from the upgrading with the gem crafter to the gems themselves on the auction house.
Yeah, because pretty much to get to Radiant Stars, it was something along. I think it was like 18 or 19 million. I think just in crafting costs to get up there.
And now it's
That's
what,
not.
200K, something like
Yeah,
that.
it's not even. I mean, it's not even that much. And then so really, but if you're looking at the prices of them, they're roughly about the same. I mean, some of them are a little bit lower and some of them are a little bit higher, but relatively speaking, it's about the same prices that you were paying before. It's just that, like you said, all the flawless squares are now the same price, and those are going up and down all over the place. But it's even kind of the same thing for crafting materials. Even actually, white items are selling for like 50,000 a piece at times because people don't want to go to Halls of Agony 2 and click on weapon racks themselves, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You need a lot of a lot of white materials for the crafting now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the item, because items disenchant into like up to 9 or 10 materials, it's a lot better to trade the items.
yeah.
And you can build up quickly yourself too. So
On that
Yeah,
note, I
yeah,
actually have a question for those of you who were in the beta, which is are the crafting materials that you can get at level 60 on 2.0 right now still used for level 70 items, or are they a completely different set?
Completely different. It's at 61 is when you get everything that's brand new. So
So there
Marquise
isn't
drop.
really much point
Nope.
to hoarding crafting
No.
materials
The,
now.
the well the only reason I would say that if you wanted to is because any items that you get now that drop in 2.0 are crafted, you can enchant them later on. So you can there's still some decent stat items that you can get at level 60, and those will require 60 materials, either brimstones for legendaries or just the essences and tiers. But
you can't enchant any legacy materials in River of Souls now.
no,
They changed that.
no, you can because they dropped into like technically we're in the expansion. So
I think it's still legacy until you're in the expansion.
I don't know. It might be, but I swear I remembered reading a blue post or something like that. That because like we get the stuff that drops now, even though it doesn't pop it up. They originally first said that you didn't get the transmogs for them, but then they came back and they said, "Oh, we made a mistake. You actually do."
Yeah, maybe you do because you can't get. I mean, the main problem with the legacy stuff was there were lots of items that had like 45 and 50% enhanced damage.
Yeah, but
And when you upgraded the damage on those, you could get like 2,700 on a one-handed weapons.
yeah, weapons.
which is way more than
Weapons
you could find.
were the big offenders. Armor, not so much. I mean, but you could still enchant armor. It would last you until about 70, but you would pretty easily replace. I wasn't really wearing any legacy armor so much as I was actually using legacy weapons at 70 that were enchanted. So
And jewelry.
yeah, jewelry too. But even then,
mean,
jewelry still gets even replaced somewhat because you just get the higher stat rolls. You get up to like 500 or 600 stats at level 70, and eventually. But I mean, I didn't replace my 60 neck until I got a Essa Johann neck, and even then, that was a significant downgrade. I think it was like 16% DPS loss, but that neck alone for the proc on it, the kind of vortex suck you in, that was one of those things that's like, doesn't matter how much damage it did, it was the best neck that I could get.
Yeah, I spent about a week and a half of the beta towards the end, re-rolling the same amulet over and over again, and finally got CC on it like 2 days before the beta went away. I was like, oh. But I forget which one it was, but it was like 700 dex, 700 vit, 97% crit damage, and I finally got a 10% crit chance on a roll. So it was a gigantic everything. That made me happy, and then it went away. But obviously we can go and get those again. But just to clarify that, if people weren't, that question has come up many times in our clan chat. We'll get into clans a little later in this, but people keep asking, are any of the current crafting materials or gems useful? And as you just said, Rankil, no, they're not. There's a whole new tier of crafting materials that drop from 61 and up, and there's a new kind of blue, a new kind of yellow,
And you can't upgrade
of,
them, or you can't up.
yeah, a new kind of orange, and there's also, you find, what are they, death vials or something? I forget what they're called.
Death's Breath.
Yeah, and that's like the new version of the
Demonic essences.
vial,
Yeah.
demonic essences.
I
I haven't
wonder.
played. I forgot all the names of the old crafting stuff. I keep finding them now.
Yeah, I
What is
know.
this? Where's my Tome of Secret? Oh, those don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's one reason for this 50% experience bonus. Because if you can't hoard items and you realize that, the only reason to play is for fun, and who does that, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, the
Well,
thing,
not anymore. We just farm Mirror Eamon, and that's no
yeah, I was
fun
gonna say
whatsoever.
people are just doing chest runs and stuff now, but but it's a thing.
We're doing divorce runs for Hadrig.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you get a baseline of gear, you find some stuff, I guess, along the way, but really, like, I mean, I've spent a little bit of my profits and stuff that I made, kind of upgrading some pieces here and there, but for the most part, I'm just going off of what I'm finding and using that to upgrade. And there's still, I mean, there's still some 2.0 items if I get them that will greatly increase my build, and that's more or less what I'm waiting for right now is just for those items to drop. And the only way I'm going to do it is by keep playing. So.
Are you actually worrying about trying to increase your character now, or just grinding for EXP stuff? Because I'm like, who cares? I'll just replace all the gear in a week and Reaper of Souls anyway.
Yeah, on hardcore, no. Softcore, to me, it's kind of like I'm just the more powerful I get my character, the faster I go through paragons, and I'm just trying to bank as many paragons now because that's about the only thing that you can do. So if I can get free upgrades, then that makes it that much easier to get higher paragon levels.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
playing.
I'll ask you the question in a second, Sentarius. I mean, so yeah, getting away from economy and gym prices and stuff a little bit. Just what have you been playing, Sentarius, and what are you enjoying? What classes that you've gotten into new skills? Obviously, you had a little bit of a preview on the PTR, and you had new builds worked out.
Yes.
So what do you like and what do you not like about the changes in the class stuff?
You know, gosh, big picture, I like all of the changes more than I thought I would. The classes. So my Diablo class history is pretty straightforward. Diablo 2, originally when it was out, and for years I only played Paladins, but later before Diablo 3 came out, I played Meteor Sorks. Yeah, I know. So I was so psyched for the Wizard when Diablo 3 came out, and frankly, I thought it was awful. No offense, I know a lot of people liked the critical mass builds and the melee wizards and so on. I did not. But in 2.0, they finally made like every wizard build you can think of viable. So I've been playing primarily on my wizard, followed by my barbarian, who is no longer a whirlwind barb, but still has by far better gear than any of my other characters. So I've been having fun with the boulder toss rune for ancient spear. Those are sort of my two quasi mains, at least until the Crusader shows up. And other than that, I've just sort of been tinkering with the other characters. Um, and the extent to which I'm interested in getting specific items, and this is another thing that maybe you guys know more than I do.
We're gonna get a whole thing on items in a minute if you want to save
Okay,
that.
okay.
So just to throw it to Rankil.
Yeah, leave it there.
Same question. What are your characters? What are your classes? What are your new builds? What's fun?
Well, it's actually kind of strange, just because I had this whole beginner witch doctor build or something to do, but then it was actually towards the end of the beta. It was like me and a bunch of the other streamer witch doctors. We kind of were like playing all together, and most of us were gravitating towards the same build. But now, kind of the big build with witch doctors now is this super high attack speed fetish build, and you're using since fire bats, the vampiric bats, which used to be lifesteal, and since they took that out, now it has a 0 channeling cost on it. So you pretty much just stand there and just keep constantly casting a free spell, and then you use the fetish psychopants passive. And so the higher that your attack speed is, it's more procs, and it procs. If you get this one breakpoint, it's like 6 ticks a second, and you can end up having anywhere from 10 to 20 fetishes falling around, and each one's doing like 180% weapon damage. So it's a pretty solid build, and it's interesting because witch doctors usually didn't use attack speed ever. They actually tried to stay away from attack speed, so now it's kind of this other build that goes around, and that's where if I get a Boot 2.0 stuff like the new 4-piece Zuni, a Maska Dram, which is it's like up to 100% pet damage, and then there's Tasker and Theos, which are like 40 to 50% attack speed for your pets. It's like kind of those items. If I get them together, then it'll just multiply even more the viability of the build. But I can do like T3, T4 right now, pretty solid and comfortable. So, but yeah.
Well, I guess that was our whole intro into build changing legendaries.
Yeah, and then I played a little bit in hardcore. I've been playing my monk, but which actually is kind of surprising. I didn't do too much to him, and I was doing Torment 1 last night with my buddy. I have like 80k damage, and I just did some upgrades, so I'm up to like 800k toughness on it. It was a little bit sketchy in some spots, but I mean it was doable, but slow. But that's kind of
it's pretty low for Torment. Most people are saying like 1.2 toughness for Torment.
Yeah. I mean,
especially for a melee character.
I mean, it's more that I got cheat death or whatever. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to even think what their cheat death is. It's
near death experience.
Yes, and so yeah, it's like I got that, and I have Serenity, so it's kind of a, I have those moments where I can kind of die and then maybe save myself, but I don't know.
So the second you disconnect, you're doomed. But other than that, you're doing pretty well.
Pretty much, but
I don't know if this is part of their plan to smooth out damage and have fights be longer and more tactical and less dangerous, or at least less insta-death. But I feel like with the 2.0 items, it is vastly easier to increase toughness than to increase damage. Like, my characters are pretty routinely, by the time they have 80k damage, having 600, 700 toughness. 1,000.
Well, you get vid on everything now, so
Yeah.
in much higher rolls. I mean, like all my armor is, 200, 250 vid, and main stat. Whereas, in the old days, you get 60 vid, you'd be happy with. So, I mean, I started off version 2 and playing some. I really enjoyed Demon Hunter a lot in the Reaper of Souls beta. I've talked about on the last few podcasts. I won't go into all the details of the changes, but I think it's a much improved character. We've got a couple of really big threads in the hardcore forum on Diablo Link Gamers going on about how cool Demon Hunters are now. So you can go read those if you want more details. But and there's some really awesome build-changing legendaries as well for the character. For her. I should say her, because there are no male Demon Hunters. It's just wrong if you play one. You can choose males, but you'd be wrong to do so. And they have really funny voices, too, and they run weird. But they're awesome characters now, and they're much buffed. And like you were just saying, Sentarius. I want to call you Sentarius. There's another I. Sentarius. It's a bonus point, bonus vowel.
Yep.
Just to make the prices right, or the Wheel of Fortune difficult. So, but yeah, they're much less squishy, and just so any regular Demon Hunter build that used to be awesome, especially in hardcore, it works really well. And the first day of the version 2, I was just I'm thinking I'm just going to kind of have fun and play around for a couple of weeks. I'm not going to play that much. I'll just boost some experience and wait for Reaper of Souls to get serious about upgrading things. And so I was playing around, speed rushing. So I'd sold most of my gear months ago, so I was kind of like half self-found in new stuff. And I'm like, I'll just do Act 2 for a little bit. Go to the Dogger Oasis. Right by the waypoint, there's 4 champions at the edge of the screen. I'll just nuke them with rapid fire. And of course, the Key Warden was right behind them off the edge of the screen. And he absorbed 1,000 rapid fires and then reflected them all back at me, and I died instantly. So that was
nice.
Like literally like an hour into version 2. And lost my hardcore Demon Hunter to that. And I was like, that is cheesy. He actually wasn't even visible on the screen until after I was dead. And then you could like move, you kind of wait, you kind of see when they're flying around after you die, you wait to see what the hell just killed you.
Yeah.
And obviously I knew, because that guy's a death trap for Demon Hunters, because if anyone doesn't know, he has his missile dampening effect, which just catches all your projectiles. And if you're using rapid fire, you're shooting out like 8 or 10 a second. And he can shoot back all of those at once when he spins. And basically, a Demon Hunter can slaughter her entire party in a tenth of a second in that area.
Yeah, reflecting bullet shots are fun.
Yeah, that's just a joke in softcore, but in hardcore, it's like a really bad thing. So I had to make a new Demon Hunter. But of course, it's fun to power level now. So I went, like in 3 days, the new Demon Hunter, entirely self-found, except for I think an amulet I have left over. Because I sold off almost everything. So I had some crafted amulets I couldn't sell off. And it's just immediately back, and I can do tournament with her pretty happily. So you can level up really quickly now. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of really good builds of the Demon Hunter. I don't want to go into that forever. I've been talking for 5 minutes at a time here anyway, but that's mainly been my experience, is playing Demon Hunter powering up, and lots more people are getting into that now. That and the Wizard's any of the most popular. The Wizard, almost everyone loves the changes.
Yeah, Wizard.
Unless you were doing an Archon Wizard that lasted forever before, but yeah, Wizard has got so many awesome builds now.
Yeah.
It actually feels powerful, like only the Barbarian ever did before.
Either of you guys were big Barbarian fans?
I was.
Spin to Win fans?
I was the whole time.
You weren't doing Spin to Win, though, were
Yeah,
you?
I was.
Okay, you're a bad person. Get off the podcast.
I had a Spin to Win, but I didn't play him too much. But then,
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Well, it's just like, I still think, because there are people that have been asking me, it's like, oh, what's the best class to start out? And I'm like, Barbarians suck to start out, but just like Crusaders, they once they start getting some specific legendary items, and you get some of those like build changing items, then those classes turn into ridiculous powerhouses. Like once you get beyond kind of the Fury starvation and the kind of the same thing with your Crusaders, like a Wrath starvation, and you get to the point where you just have like these certain few legendaries, and you only need like a few of them really. And then like the Barbarians and Crusaders that I was playing with, that were like, I was playing with Monstrous on his Crusader, and it was a mace that made your Blessed Shield cost nothing, and then he had a shield that made it bounce 6 more times on top of it. So it was like, he's using a spender, as his prime attack, and then just it's bouncing 6 times off everything. So the damage that was going out of it was just insane, and that's just 2 items, that you can get. So
you need to find them yourself too. You can't just go buy them.
Yeah,
I think that more classes feel fun the way like they were always supposed to, and I'm sure that Whirlwind Barb players everywhere are queuing desperately or whatever. But like as someone who's using that build, not exclusively, I played a ton on my Demon Hunter as well, especially as the months passed. It was sort of like eye-opening to pop out in 2.0 without that crutch. And I would think that once people really play 2.0 and experience all the different classes and find something that works on the Barb, and oh look, the Barb is still fun too, should really get over it pretty quickly, because I was talking before about damage being a lot lower compared to toughness on a lot of new items. My Barbarian is an absolute weakling for all that he had really good gear, I thought. It turns out that those overpowered passives were really propping up his ability to play on higher monster powers. And he's still fun, but at the moment he's much more... I've switched to a tankier build, and he's one of my least fast-moving characters, although I'm sure he'll gear up.
And does he deserve to be slow after being wildly overpowered for 18 months?
Oh, totally.
Okay. Direct all your hate to Sentarius. That was his opinion. The few Barb fans. But people I know who play Barb a lot. I have a whole article going up with Zappa fan, who does our hardcore forum, and he's been a big-time Barb player forever. He used to do MP10 with a hardcore Barb in the old days, which was an achievement at the time, and still is if you can find MP10 anymore. But he just does a very kind of a methodical. He does Fury and Revenge and other stuff like that. A leap for stuns, and just a little bit. He was never a WOTB permanently. He was never a spin to win. He thinks the Barb is much better now and improved, and he was really powerful with that in the beta as well. So it's just, there were certain builds, obviously, like the Wizard. There were people who loved the Archon Wizard and just stayed Archon forever and nuked the world, and they're unhappy with the changes, whereas most Wizard people I know, with the whole clan thing we're going to get into in a minute, but I mean, there's constant chatter. The clan channel that I'm running in our hardcore clan is 140 people now, because I keep not letting anyone else join because I don't want to max it out entirely. But so there's just sort of constant conversation going on, and everyone is like, "I love the Wizard. I love Orb." There's always like every 5 minutes someone's like, "I just tried a new build with the Wizard and it's so awesome."
Yeah,
and there's just so many ways to play the Wizard. I think partially because the game changes make it less. You don't have to be all CC and freeze everything perma freeze. You can still survive with more offensive skills.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Demon Hunter's benefiting from as well.
Yeah, you kind of it's even the same thing if people are like, what gear should I build towards? And it's like, honestly, you don't know, because it's whatever gets thrown in your lap, and then you make a build that works around that. So there's a lot of people that would have some item of, it's like, oh, every time that I fear a guy, I get a boost of speed, so now I'm running my fear abilities or something else. It's like you get items, and that's what dictates what your build is. I mean, you can try and build towards something by getting pieces or things like that, but it's going to be harder on you, because trying to specifically look for an item sucks. But if you're just kind of like, well, whatever falls in my lap and I'm going to change my build, like, I the first legendary I got were the Mage Fist gloves, so I ended up going immediately towards Fire Bats, so it was like and I was starting out with Corpse Explosion, or Corpse Bomb, whatever, on the Acid Cloud rune. So it was like I immediately went from a poison-based build to a fire-based build just by one item alone.
Yeah, well, and you can do that with the runes, if I may cut in. It's almost embarrassing from the perspective of the developer how much the promise now being realized shows how incomplete the game was to begin with. Like every skill, I mean, maybe not every skill, but the vast majority of the skills all through vanilla 1.0 only had one or maybe two runes that anybody would ever use. But
Yep.
now,
or zero.
Yeah.
yeah, and now, and the wizard's probably the best example, just because the element types are such obvious dividers. But now, like, I well, like, I didn't actually. My wife found a couple of legendaries with huge boosts to arcane damage when she was on her wizard anyway. And all you had to do was keep your skills, just change the runes, different damage type, different mechanics in terms of whether they're snaring or attack speed increasing or whatever, but equally viable and fun. It's really like a revelation compared to before 2.0, I think.
Yeah, so my metaphor is that they say a good coach is, you suit your offensive scheme or your coaching scheme to your players, and not try to squeeze your players into your scheme. And that's kind of what you do with gear now. You find something, hey, this boosts fire damage, like your mage fists, Rankil. Okay, I'm going to use fire. You don't say, oh, if only I could find something that boosted poison, I could keep using poison dart. You got to kind of change around to what you get.
Yeah, and they even said that they were going to go through and change, because I think the wizard got the biggest changes through, like they almost in a way restructured the entire class for the wizard. But I think it was, I don't know if it was in one of those developer interviews for the week, or it was somewhere else where they said it, but like the ones that they changed that are out right now were basically the easiest ones with the least amount of like art changes, because it's hard for them to change a fire-based one that was originally all the skills are fire to changing them into having an ice one, because they have to put different particle effects, make different animations for it. So it was like the passes that they went through to add in for all the other classes, that was just the easiest to do, because they just could like change a color on it. Like, for example, it was like Spirit Barrage, those are all, and Haunt, those are all cold damage right now, but there's no variance to them. But they were saying that it was later, so it's going to be probably one of like the earlier patches that they're going to put out, is going to be kind of like the first big balance patch, and I would hope they would put in those different changes, which that'll make a lot of other classes kind of feel like they've got, okay, we've been put on the drawing board and changed around so that you can have all these different skills.
The more item-based skill design almost reminds me of Diablo 2, and if, say, all of my accounts had been deleted because it had been 90 days or whatever, and I was starting fresh, like doing bail runs over and over again, hoping for a unique item, a unique weapon with big enough damage to start burning through nightmare difficulty. And I didn't really care what the weapon was. I just needed one good one, and I was on my way. I feel like some of that's starting to be in play in Diablo 3 here.
Yeah.
Okay, related topic I wanted to ask you guys about, item farming. Smart drops are fun. People who don't know, smart drops basically means that when you find an item, it's likely to be useful for your class, and usually you will have the appropriate main stat. And if you find, some stuff is hard-coded, like if you find a mighty belt that only a barb can wear, it's not going to have intelligence. It's only going to have strength.
Good riddance.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the issues with that is it makes it really hard to farm for other classes. I've noticed since there's no auction house anymore, you can't just go on and buy monk gear. So if your main is a barb and you're trying to find stuff for a demon hunter, you're going to find very few crossbows or bows. If you do find, you occasionally will find legendary, and it will have dex in theory. So it's not like you're going to find a legendary crossbow with strength on it. But you just find very few of those, and it makes it really tough. It's really good if you're playing a witch doctor and you want to build up your wizard as well, because you can share your armor and
Although
stuff.
you do find crossbows with crossbows and bows with intelligence on it. And
just because Josh wants to make us hate him for that. But not a hand crossbow.
Yeah, not hand crossbows, though.
And often items have skills now. You have bonus 10 to 15% to various skills, and those will always roll for your class with smart. Well, not always. I found some Crusader stuff. So
I got a Crusader flail, a 60 Crusader flail. That was hilarious.
Yeah, but generally speaking, it will be useful for your class. But that makes it really tough to farm for other classes. So have you guys noticed any issues with this? Do you wish there was a little more variability sometimes? So if you're playing your barb, I want to find some good dex gear. I mean, obviously you can't click a button and make that happen, but do you think it should be a little more random, or do you like how it's working?
It was like when I played the console, and we had the podcast where I was talking about the console and gearing out my followers. I was playing a witch doctor, and yet I wanted to run the scoundrel, but I wasn't finding a dexterity gear for him. So I basically had to switch over to the enchantress, and it's kind of it is that same issue where it's hard for you to even gear out your followers for other classes. But And it was even to the point, I don't know, it was a bug, I don't know, but I mean, I submitted it during the beta, but I got like a Templar relic and it still rolled intelligence on it though. So that was like the only time where I saw something that shouldn't have been rolling my main stat, but did roll it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing that I see is like, I mean, it's kind of a way of like, if you want to play another class, you should, I mean, I think of it, it's like you should play that class. You know, it's like, why does that seem like a bad thing? You know, like if you like playing a class and you want to play them and gear them up, playing them will get them gear. And it's kind of like, I mean, unless you want to go around and just, you know, monkey around and kill some stuff here and there, then you can do that on any difficulty. But if you really want to progress that character, you know, you just have to play them. And I don't know, I like that because I like playing all the different classes and stuff. But I could see how it'd be frustrating, you know, if someone really likes playing, you know, their wizard or something else and they want to find demon hunter gear, but you're not really going to find demon hunter gear by playing your wizard. So
one of the things people, I'll cut it to you in a second, but one of the things people have often said about Diablo 2 is there were lots of legendary items that were just dream items for Class X. I mean, you want to find a Titan's Revenge or something like that. Hey, and I got to make a Jabazon.
yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of what would be useful about this maybe in Diablo 3, where you would find some awesome item for, you know, you'd find some Crusader shield. Oh, cool, now I can make a Crusader because I've got this really awesome shield waiting for
Yeah,
me.
I mean, it'll
So
give
that's
you
kind of like
the
a
incentive to roll that class instead of being like, oh, I'm going to list this now on the auction house and sell it, get gold for it, and then buy myself an upgrade. You know, because I mean, a lot of people that I saw there was always like, they would play one class, they'd be like, oh, I'm done with the game and I'm bored. And I'm like, have you played all the other classes? And they're like, no, I don't want to play them. And it's like, I think they more felt like they just didn't want to gear them out. But if they end up getting, like you said, one of those like crazy legendaries, they look at it and they're like, wow, this would be really cool to play this class. It might get people, you know, to play another class. And really that kind of in a way almost like you play two classes, it can kind of like double your playtime basically on it almost.
So you argued against my point, and then I made the point, and now you're agreeing with me.
Yes.
I win. So what do you think about that one, Sentarius?
I mean, broadly, I agree. First of all, this is the very good reason that they didn't make every item a smart drop, right? Like, it is possible, even if it's difficult to find items for other classes. And I want to question a little bit how difficult it really is. Like, is it harder to find a really good item for, you know, your demon hunter when you're on a wizard or whatever than it used to be, or does it just feel that way because it's so ridiculously easy to find good items for the class that you're playing at that time? I don't know.
Well, it was impossible to find good items in the old days.
Just
Obviously, it's
curious.
easier now. It is
This
at least
is completely
yeah, it is at least
academic.
possible.
But
I think it's just more that you expect to get an item that's rolled towards your class now. I mean, it's almost like
well,
every time
I
you
think,
do, but
like,
I still think it is harder though to
like
still
Rankil
find
was
for any other
saying,
class.
I think that the current system, the current balance, if you will, works great for players who play every class or are interested in every class. And, you know, that might be a good thing to do while waiting for the expansion to drop and the level cap to go up to work on some of the classes that maybe you've been neglecting. I think that if you were to introduce more variability, if they were to introduce more variability, they should also increase the total number of drops a little bit again. Not back to showers of worthless blues from every single monster, but you know, if they had, say, 10% more items drop with the guarantee that the extra 10% wouldn't be smart drops, maybe that would strike more of a balance. I'm not sure.
The only way I could see of actually farming for another class on, you know, like for me, like my witch doctor, is like, say I want to gear up a demon hunter. Well, if I play with a friend of mine who's a demon hunter and they're already geared out, I mean, because what happened, you know, in the beta
And
was
they'll
that
get smart
you,
drops.
well, yeah, you would get an item, but most of the time you didn't actually want it, and you would kind of pawn it off to any of the guys in group and say, "Does anyone want this?" And if they said, "Yeah, I'll take it," then you say, "Okay, next, you know, basically sharded item that you get, give it back to me, you know, so that I can shard it." And it's kind of the same way. So like you could, if you're playing with someone who already has a pretty well developed demon hunter, they could kind of just feed you gear, and then you could feed them gear for your class if they're looking to build up that class. I mean, that might even work. You know, kind of this whole community thing where you're gonna, instead of seeing people playing in like a witch doctor only group to share loot, you know, you might see people who are actually cross playing because they want to gear up their alts with them, you know, because they've already been so developed, but they still want to continue, you know, because they're looking for that one item on their main class, but they don't want to play a demon hunter to gear them up, kind of thing. You know, so it's because that's the thing that I always fear is like I'll be playing on some other class and basically what would have been that legendary drop could have been the actual legendary drop that I wanted on my witch doctor. So it still keeps me in an incentive to play my witch doctor.
That was a beautiful segue to the whole thing about clans and communities I wanted to talk about, but I'm not ready to talk about that yet. I have a couple more things on
Okay.
legendary items, so good try though. You knew what I was thinking. So last point on this is, as you were saying, if you toward the end of the beta, I had been playing a lot of Demon Hunter for a few days, and I had really good gear in most slots, and I kept finding almost as good gear that just was just trash. I'm like, I'm not going to make two Demon Hunters, you know. And there was, you know, I would love to find some one-handed melee weapons here. I'd love something for my monk or for my barbarian, and instead it's, oh look, another, you know, legendary hand crossbow. So I can see maybe eventually, if you're only playing one class a lot, you might get kind of bored with that because now you can't just dump that stuff on the auction house. You're like, oh, I have 47 hand crossbows and I can't trade them, and they're all binding on account. You know, these are 9 out of 10s, and I'm using a 9.5 out
Yeah.
of 10. So that might be an issue long term, but I guess we'll find out. But segueing into another issue about legendaries, jewelry. Jewelry was an issue in Reaper of Souls beta. It seemed to me that you found a disproportionate amount of jewelry, rings and amulets, sets and uniques, as opposed to, say, you know, helmets or chest pieces or whatever. And my experience with that is that the vast majority of legendary jewelry was junk. It was really hard to get good mods on it. A lot of them had two inherent mods that were not two inherent affixes, neither of which were main stat or, you know, one of the
Hmm.
trifectas. And it would be like, now you've got to try to get your two random ones, both trifectas, and then enchant something else, and then it's almost as good as a rare. But it seems to me that that's sort of working as is intended. I actually traded a couple emails about this with one of the developers, so I kind of know what he said about it. But you know what they're thinking anyway is. But have you guys noticed issues with? Do you seem like you find a lot more legendary stuff? I mean, legendary jewelry than you'd expect compared to other items. And B, are you using any of it or mostly rares? And why don't you go first, Sentarius?
Um, I haven't. I mean, I haven't. I don't think I've played as many hours as either of you, so my sample size is smaller. I think I have
Lucky
been.
you.
I think I have been getting more jewelry than I would have expected, um, but it hasn't been a problem simply due to the progression my characters were already at. Um, a huge main stat roll on almost any item right now makes it an upgrade over my low end trifecta gear. I didn't have really high end trifecta gear. So for players sort of in that gear bracket, that level of gear, it might be working as intended to sort of phase out the trifecta gear entirely. But I have no idea once you're, you know, looking at the really elite stuff at level 70.
How about you, Rankil?
I don't know necessarily about. I mean, I do notice that there are some kind of junky rings and amulets and stuff that you get, but I don't know.
Just some.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them where you kind of look at the legendary affix and you're like, that it? But I mean, for right now, as far as the actually what I'm using is I have a Hellfire ring that I crafted because that was one of the things I did before the 2.0 patch was actually farm a bunch of machines to get organs to make 2.0 rings. And I ended up making a pretty good, it was like attack speed, it was max attack speed, max crit, intellect vitality. And then I was leveling an alt class, and I ended up finding a level 58 Lyric Signet that was crit and crit hit damage and intellect and vitality. And that's the other ring that I'm using. And that's pretty much it. I mean, as far as the amulets, though, I haven't found anything. I did get one of those arcane immune amulets, but I didn't actually find it. I bought it off the auction house for that brief moment when you could sell bind on account items when they didn't realize that people were able to still list them on the auction house. But yeah, that was like the one. I still got one of those, and it is nice standing in arcane beams. It's quite hilarious. But yeah, but I mean, for the rest of the jewelry pieces, it's more stats though. Like I didn't really find any strong legendary rings. There is that one that combines all your zombie dogs into like one giant zombie dog, but I might use that if I'm doing kind of a pet build or something like that. But yeah, I haven't found anything that's been, you know, too crazy. I guess that I've well, the unities I think are nice, but my friend found one of those that's like a huge elite damage reduction, but it has that shares your health between everybody else, and he got it on hardcore, and that's about the worst ring that you could probably wear on hardcore if everybody else is wearing unities. It's like you get one guy standing in fire.
Unless you've got very little hit
It's
points.
like you get a guy standing in fire, and I think you could. I almost think in a way that there might be PKs that are going to run around with those rings. They'll go stand in the fire. They'll pop their unity on and kill off other members of the party that have the ring and don't really realize what the actual legendary affix means.
Yeah, I'm expecting that's going to be
Bug or
patched
feature?
and changed somehow because it seems like obvious PK bait.
Yeah.
And it's like by far the best legendary ring.
It's got
at
a
least
really good
usually.
stats on it.
'Cause it's got a really big bonus to elite damage too, which is nice. And it also has CC every time, so pretty good. What it seems like in Reaper of Souls is, especially when there was gambling, you could just get hundreds of rare jewelries very quickly. And so almost all my characters in the Reaper of Souls beta, I don't think I had one Unity on a Witch Doctor, on my Wizard, I mean. And every other class had really, really high level, like 9 out of 10 quality trifectas. Because you could just get so many rare rings and amulets, and then you could enchant the one roll that wasn't perfect on them. So eventually they all had, 400 main stat, 5.5 or 6 on crit chance, 47% crit damage and IAS. And it's like you just can't beat that in flat DPS with a unique, even with a legendary ring. Even the legendaries can get a little bit higher on the stats, but of course you're trying to get the random stats or whatever. And it just seemed like the way the system is that you will find tons and tons of rare jewelry and be able to get really good ones, and eventually you will find enough legendary that the higher innate potential of legendaries will outpoint the rares. But it's much easier to get like a 9 out of 10 quality rare than it is to get even like a 7 out of 10 quality legendary, which would be as good as a 9 out of 10
and more
quality
so
rare.
with enchanting, because you can, more or less, as long as you have gold and the materials for it, you can craft rares, or you can enchant rares to get them closer to those legendary items to get stat-wise. So,
Talking, the clans of the communities thing have blown up. It's a fun thing to have a lot of people all like-minded sharing stuff. And one of the cool features you get is the item is whenever anybody loots a unique, a legendary, or a set, it pops up in the chat. Everyone goes, "Ooh, what's that?" And people have had some funny comments that I've seen in the clan chat. We had like 70 people online at once in the hardcore clan the first couple of days, and just every second there's something else funny. And people were like, "Could you guys stop finding awesome gear? Because I can't even play. I'm just looking at the pop-ups of all the gear you're finding." So are either you guys doing clans and communities? And if not, I guess I'll just keep talking.
No, I am.
Have you been doing it, and how is it affecting your play experience?
It's great. It's affecting the play experience in a tremendously positive way, but it definitely needs some work. My clan is a longtime Ink Gamers affiliate, the Holy Knights of Westmarch, and we set up a clan. Oh, but apparently it's the mid-1990s, and there are character limits on clan names, so we can be found in-game in our community, actually. We're using just Knights of Westmarch for both a clan and a community. And that has to do with what I want to say about room for improvements. But generally speaking, it's great because that ability to talk to everybody at once, which I would point out was in WoW when it released in like 2004, is something that was missing from Diablo 3 and that really, affected the ability to interact with fellow clan members who you weren't really close with or weren't running in a group with or something like that. So having a chat channel is tremendous. The item, it's also been fun having the linked legendaries, especially early on while, everyone is saying, "Ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's that? Hey guys, look at this." We would always just in party chat link every legendary we found, and now we don't have to. And it's extra hilarious when somebody gets on, I won't name names, but when somebody gets on and into the clan, the in-game clan for the first time, and doesn't realize that it's auto-linking, and then manually links into the clan chat as well. But it seriously needs to be something that can be toggled on and off, because I can imagine in like a few weeks, once people have seen a greater proportion of the legendaries, or in really big clans like Ink, it just being incredibly obnoxious. And in the same note, it would be great to be able to have features like that optionally in communities, because we're
Because
right now
communities
they're
are useless
useless.
now.
They need the auto item linking to be an option, and they need this is so unbelievable. Maybe I'm just too dumb to have been able to find it, so make fun of me. But they need some sort of hotkey from the keyboard to be able to get into the channel so that you like we've had a bunch of old members search for our name in the Knights of Westmarch or Holy Knights of Westmarch in the clan community finder, find our community and join it and be like, hey, I used to play with you guys 10 years ago. And it's awesome, except it's really hard to actually interact with them, which I thought was the point of the communities.
Saying like, I mean, and the thing that sucks is, which I realized, is that you can only join 5 communities as a maximum.
And only one
Well,
clan.
the
Really
clan,
sucks.
I guess, is not too bad because, like, right now I'm running more or less a small clan because I kind of more want to have like a group of my friends, and that's kind of our clan. And then the communities, I was expecting to use those to branch out into. I mean, mainly because of the limits to the size too. Like, I mean, a lot of the communities and stuff that I join up on, there's hundreds of people that are in them, and you can't really have that many people in a same thing even with like in chat channels. Some of them are like 500 of them are in a chat channel at once, and it's a pretty much just a cluster of people just spamming things and linking and asking dumb questions. But that's why I kind of wanted to make my clan chat be like the smaller the group of all of our friends that play together. But yeah, like just the stuff of like where it doesn't auto join onto the ones that you were previously joined into every time you log on, so you got to manually rejoin all your chat rooms. Getting into the chat rooms is annoying because like in WoW they have it's /1 is general, /2 is trade, and /3 is your local chat or something, your and it's like, but each one of those, they don't have like a slash number that switches into it. You have to like go through and switch through some other stuff or click on to the left of someone into the thing to go into the chat if you're in multiple chat rooms. And there isn't even like a shortcut that's like a slash like CO for community or whatever it is, because it's like, I don't know, it needs some work just for quality of life stuff on it, but I would like to see more, especially since the damn thing has a scroll bar on it. I mean, it's like if I can only have 5 communities, but maybe that's just for they're testing out to see how the communities are and getting feedback. Like for example, the dinging every time in a community or even in your clan is chatting. So I keep thinking that someone in the party is saying something, and I'm looking down and I'm like, wait, what is going on here? But
They did say they were going to fix that at least.
But it is like getting the items when people link and stuff like that, because I think it is hilarious that, it auto links it for them so that it's kind of like even if they got an item that was complete junk and they were ashamed of it, it's still just shown out to everybody else, and then everyone in the in the clan just gives a little laugh at it. Like for example, when I got my Crusader flail, I got some pretty hilarious laughs in the clan. They're all just like, "Hey, you can use that maybe in a few weeks," and I'm just like, "Shut up." I wish it was an item that I could use.
Well, you should have not identified it then. It was a
Yeah, I was
when
more
you saw
doing it
it
just to see what they would say, but it was going to be like, "Yep, thanks, Diablo."
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned, Sentarius, you can turn off notification displays of stuff. But you have to do it every single time you log in. It doesn't preserve it. So you go to the roster and there's a little geared thing on the top right, and you can turn off. Mostly, I turn off the achievements because we often have 60, 70 people online at once. And especially if you have a group of like 4 people in the same game, and they all do whatever Zoltan Cool for the first time, and they all got like 3 different achievements.
Wall of text.
And it's like achievement spam. 12 of them pop up at once. Every person in the clan. And I've actually gotten machine lag, or you get a little bit of a stutter when it loads all these achievements at once. Like I guess it had because they all link to the achievement if you click the text. So it's not just words appearing, but it's doing something in your system. And if I've gotten 9 and 10 and 11 achievements at once from other people's games, and you get a little half second of stutter, which in hardcore is not a good thing always. So
Yeah, that was the same thing at the release.
But you can turn that off if you do every single
That was
game.
the same thing at release though that I did. I turned off the achievements because like right when the game came out, everyone was getting achievements for like it's like turn over your first rock, and everyone gets that stuff, and I'm like, I don't
talk to Kane.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first week of Reaper of Souls is going to be like that, where there's a billion achievements all at once. Everybody's level 10 Crusader, ding! It's like, no, God, everything in Act 5.
It's like you've started a game
and
get an achievement for it. It's like, no.
I mean, from our point of view, where we're using the community to include family members of people who are in the clan or former members and so on, if communities just worked a little bit more like clans in game, it would be a big improvement. And I cannot...
Yeah.
And is the limit to the number you can join, is this like you can only have 10 or 12 or 15 if you pay them extra money character slots, like some BS about, our massive data centers can't handle the lag from you being in 10 communities? Like, is there a justification for it? Or is it just arbitrary?
I don't know because I mean during the beta, to be honest, communities were dead. Like nobody joined communities in there. I mean, like I was in a few communities, but nobody was ever in the chat because it never auto joined you in there, and the the community player base in the beta was so small that people weren't even really in the communities. They were just more or less like merging into the same clans in a way. And you more or less just like played with a few handful of people and added them to your friends list, really. So I just think it was more or less an oversight of them because they didn't really get a full test with this, and even on like PTR, nobody was really testing them out. So now that they're actually, more or less beta testing them, I guess, because people are actually using them, they're getting this feedback, which in reality they should have got a long time ago, but just based off of the size of the people in the beta or even who are using it in the PTR was so small. So.
Well, my worry is that we know from experience and from what they've told us that it takes forever for anything BattleNet programming. 'Cause
Yeah.
there's a few BattleNet programmers that service every Blizzard game. So I'm just afraid that we're never going to get any updates for clans until like September of next year or something.
Yeah,
And it's like, oh,
unless
God.
the way that they programmed it in it was like, okay, they had the BattleNet like pipes and plugs to put in functionality into them, and it's just a matter of them like flipping a switch, to a value in the game to say, okay, you can have 10 communities or something like that. But
Remember how it took 2 years to add
yeah, and
commas to
then
the
they
auction house?
finally put them in, and then they're getting rid of the auction
Yeah,
house. I thought that was hilarious.
yeah,
To be
yeah. As I said in my news, it's like your girlfriend getting breast implants and then breaking up with you the next week. It's like, oh look, bye. So my problems with the clan, I don't want to beat it to death, but they're kind of first world problems, as the meme is. It's like
Right.
because we have these clans with the gamer site, and immediately, we opened up US one and Hardcore one, both hit 150 in like 2 hours. So it's like, well, shit. Now what do we do? So then they have to start a second one, and it's like you're trying to get people from the first one to join the second one, and people keep. I'm running our hardcore clans on US and on Europe, and the US one has been at max capacity since like the day we opened it. And it's like 140. I mean, I'm leaving a little space in case someone has a friend they really want to get in or something. But every day I'll get on there, and there's 10 or 15 or 20 requests, which means I think 20 is the max you can get at one time. Otherwise, people just get an error message. And then there's like 3 of them online, so I'll send them a message. Sorry, we're not taking any more members. You can look at our 8 gamers too. And it's like, oh, that's a pain. They don't want to go to some other one. They want to be in the big one. I think because usually when you search on them, it sorts them by number of members.
Mm-hmm.
So they see, oh, it's got 140 people in it. I want to be in this busy one. The other one's got 50 people and it's steadily growing. But we should have opened like 4 at a time and so called them Hardcore East, Hardcore West, Hardcore North, something like that. But of course, you can't do all that with the same account. You can only be in one clan with the same account. So Ellie and Rush and myself all have different clans on US and Europe, and we've already had to get a number of our forum mods to start up number 2, number 3 clans. And it's just a pain to moderate. You can't see who's in all of them. I really wish they would do a system where I mailed Lyleria about this asking and hope maybe there's something they could do is to make clans work like guilds for some people. Obviously, I want special powers because I'm a unique individual and I deserve special treatment. But so they could just like flag MVPs and some people. I mean, I'm sure people running other big websites are having the same problem where you want to have you've got 7 different clans on the US server and it's like this is a pain in the ass. I need 7 people to run these and you can't be in multiple clans and you can't really see what's happening. You got to like text them separately.
That's what
you're sending IMs. How's the clan going?
From what I was understanding, though, is that's what they were trying to say, and more or less, I think, in the thought process of how I'm looking at it, is that clans are supposed to be more for a more tighter, close knit, community. So it's kind of like the people who you're actually trying to play with, and maybe doing like, you actively want to put them above everybody else, kind of thing. Like it's your exclusive little mini group. But then you do, in your case, you have you're having issues with clan sizes and having to make a bunch of things, but there's no limit to members in a community. So you could really just do one.
Yeah, but communities don't do anything. If they don't do anything cool, you don't get the items.
Yeah,
and the chat.
Yeah, well, and it's just that you can still get kind of sort of the functionality out of it, but I mean, the one thing is like having the people like on your friends list or whatever. But I mean, could you imagine being in a community with 10,000 people that's in a community and like all those people are on your friends list somehow, of like 1,000 people that are online, it would kind of just blow up your friends list and you couldn't find anyone. I mean, granted, they put them on like the bottom of the list, but if you want to like look at someone's profile for an offline friend or something. But yeah, I just think that, like I said, that during the beta, they didn't really test, the functionality of clans and communities and get any feedback from them, and now they're getting it. But I hope that it isn't really all in the Battle.net programmers' hands, because during the beta we never saw anything that changed between clans and communities, and really even from the same menus that they talked about on Gamescom, they're the same exact menus. Or it wasn't was it Gamescom, or was that at BlizzCon where they announced the clans and communities? I think it was BlizzCon. But yeah, like nothing from whenever they announced clans and communities, nothing has changed visually since then. So I'm kind of like you, afraid that it's in the Battle.net guys' hands, and it's the two guys, and when they get done playing their solitaire or something, they're going to actually get to it.
Well, they've got
Yeah,
Hearthstone, so there you
like
go.
Flux said, it is sort of first world problems. I guess the upside is that it finally is a game that is more fun to play with friends instead of just by yourself.
Yeah, the other speaking of interface, is the whole thing that clans and communities look exactly the same except for the text color is different. And I think you mentioned it earlier, Sentarius. People are searching the community instead of the clan by accident and joining it. Like, why isn't this working? And once you're in a clan, you can't search on clans. You can't actually check on other stuff at the same time. It'd be nice if there's at least a different color or something on the
There's even
interface.
stuff like you click another member and you can't see like who's in their clan or something else. Like you can't see details about it or whatever. Like there's it's just like little things that are kind of like I hope they do fix them, because I mean just in general, I mean even with community stuff, I've used that for finding groups. I'm like, hey, I'm running Torment 3 game. Anyone want to join? Send me a message. They say hi, then I invite them, and I don't have to add them to my friends list, and they don't, it doesn't spam my friends list with a bunch of clan people or anything else either. So
Okay, two other sharp points. You remind me of the friends list thing. The one problem with running a clan is your name is very visible and you get lots of friend requests. And if you get a friend request and you right click on it, you don't see anything. You can't check anything about their account from that. You can check on their account if you get a clan join request and see, okay, this guy, I'm running the hardcore ones, and people you know, are requesting membership, and you look and they've got no hardcore characters. Like, well, did you click me by accident? What are you doing? But I'm getting constant friend requests now because my account is on there, is there visible as this clan leader, and many of them aren't in the clan, and I can't look at their info. I mean, if they're gold bot, I can just delete them or whatever. But it's annoying. You can't right click on friends list requests to see about their account like you
yeah,
can with other things. And the other thing about clans is I'm running the two hardcore clans is we really need announcements when someone
yeah,
dies. I mean, that's like the most useful addition. Obviously, you get them, someone picked up 5,000 gold. We need to know this, who cares? But as opposed to this character just died forever. I mailed Illyria. She's like, that's a really good idea. I forwarded it on to the clan developers, which means, next August we might see some
well, isn't
change
that
in that.
even?
But, I'm just it should be like in black letters with like glowing red flames around it or something, something really obvious. You click it, it tells you what. I mean, obviously, it'd be nice if you click it and they would tell you how they died, etc. But that's
Yeah.
never going to happen. But at least,
Well, I mean, it could
notification of
be
that.
like
Anyway, you were saying?
like shows up in your party. So and so was slain by a such and such.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my barbarian's death
That's,
of being slain by Twinkleroot would be hilarious then for everyone in the clan.
Exactly. It would be that great.
yeah. So we're getting towards our time limit here. I guess we'll skip a couple of minor things I wanted to get into. If you guys have either of you guys have any burning issue you never got to that you really want to talk about?
No,
Three,
not really.
2, 0.
No.
Okay, how do you think the general community reception of Diablo 3 version 2 is? I mean, it seems like it's really overwhelmingly positive, which is something that's hard to imagine with Diablo 3 for the last year and a half, but is that you guys'
I mean,
impressions
I've
of your
seen a
community?
lot, because there's definitely like you look at my friends list now, and I have, I'm looking at it right now. I have 20 some people on there, whereas before it was like 2 people playing Diablo and maybe 10 people playing Hearthstone. And now it's the majority of my list is all people playing Diablo, and it's definitely got a lot of people back and playing it, but I think it's more getting them the taste of it and to getting into the expansion. But it definitely did bring back a lot of people that left the first week of the game, and they're asking all these dumb questions of things like, gee, I really wish they could add some sort of end game challenge to this, like you're finding like fighting Ubers, and you're like, yeah, they added that like a few months or so after the game came out, and they're like, oh, okay, and they're like, why can't I trade? And then it's just like, the people who didn't get in this whole BOA or trade discussions and everything else, it's kind of like there's a lot more of they're still like, oh, this game's still garbage, and it's like, oh, you're coming back now. But no, I mean, for the vast majority of it though, I've seen, it's been positive of, what people have been saying and stuff like that. So, I mean, I hope it's lasting, because first impressions are always different than a lasting impression to keep people, excited and continue in pursuing in the game, because that's always, they always say I want end game, and it's like, well, the end game is finding items, and in a way, like I was saying before, is like, if you really want a specific item, that's kind of like your carrot on the stick to keep going, and and hopefully that's a big enough carrot for people to continue playing, because really that's what you're doing, is finding items. So, and just
Well, that was Diablo 2 for
yeah, and
11
and
years.
then it's just get in the expansion, and this is just getting your feet wet, because the expansion, once you start doing adventure mode bounties, you have a whole new class, all new skills. You're gonna have even more powerful. I mean, I still feel that I'm getting pretty good legendary drops. I'm like getting 2 per hour, which I don't know. Some people are still saying they're getting, 1 every 3 hours or something, and I don't know how that's happening. I mean, they must be like killing 1 monster every 10 minutes, but
That's actually impossible
yeah,
according
it
to the
is.
devs, right? They said the 2-hour timer should
I know,
almost
but
always
people
kick in.
still, for some reason, I mean, are they counting like sitting in the main menu as their time too? I don't know, but um, it's definitely, once the expansion comes around, though, it's playing 2.0. I've noticed a lot of things that I've missed about playing in the beta, and that's making me really excited to get the expansion to come out already. And it's kind of like, okay, I've played 2.0, and I've experienced 2.0, and there's a lot of people that are still excited about 2.0, but I know what's around the corner with the expansion, and I want it here now, because I've played it and I missed so many things. Especially the Mystic and rerolling 1 stat is by far like the most amazing thing about that, because so many of the junk items that you're like, oh, this item sucks, you pretty much turn them into a good item, with just 1 affix reroll. So
Yeah, a whole topic is enchanting required for Loot 2.0. We didn't really have time for that. But so Sentarius, you're in a guild and longtime clan, and now there's a new game come out. The new version is out, and there's all kinds of fun stuff. Is your impression of people who weren't following it? I mean, obviously you were on the PTR, so you knew it was coming. Did they know it was coming, and are they back into it more? And how's it going on the whole?
Right, that I was. I don't know if they were following. They're backing now, and it's going great. There, in more detail.
They weren't following it. People are amazed how many don't know anything
Well,
that's
I
been
mean,
changed.
when I say weren't following, I mean the PTR specifically, and I'd actually be curious if there are stats as to how many people were on the PTR, because
77.
I
104, 144. I know
but
exactly.
no, because I know the beta was relatively small, and obviously a ton of people streamed videos, and there was a lot of discussion about it. But compared to past betas, they even said it was going to be relatively small. They weren't worried about their hardware. But I think the timing of the of 2.0 is actually really good to get people who aren't familiar with the beta, who haven't already tried out new builds, back into the game, playing with each other instead of by themselves, and get them comfortable with their characters, so that then when there's rifts and adventure mode and enchanting and so on, they can sort of all dive into that together and hopefully not still be playing catch up. But obviously, if it turns out everybody was on the PTR anyway, never mind on that. But the response has been really good from our members. I told you that I mentioned that we've had earlier in the podcast, we've had old members come back and say hi and play a little. And this is beating a dead horse here, but having that chat channel really makes it feel like we're exploring the game, the new features of the game together, instead of posting an impression on a message board after playing for a couple days or whatever. I mean, I've been going on for the whole last hour about how thrilled I am with. I'm basically thrilled with every change. I'm sure there are things that could be better. I've complained about some new features with the communities, but I feel like for everything that was a problem with the initial release, there are 2 things that are good about 2.0. And having never played the expansion, late March can't come fast enough.
Soon, as they say. Except it's not soon. We
yeah,
actually know when it's going to happen. So there's no TM after that soon. I've been surprised how many people were not following at all. I mean, you're wondering how many were on the PTR. And I mean, I'm in this clan chat, all day, and when I'm online, there's tons and tons of conversation. And people are like, what is this, and why are these skills changed? And people are constantly like, "What's a bounty now?" Like there were people who just didn't have any awareness of what was going on in Reaper of Souls beta at all. Like they weren't following it, and they're really curious. I mean, they're like, "So there's a new what does the Mystic do? How does enchanting work?" And I mean, I posted like 10 articles about that, and I'm sure you streamed it 1,000 hours, Rankil. So you're like, how do these people who are really into the game and are playing version 2 the day it goes live know nothing about the expansion? How have they not been following
It's just like
this?
friends of friends. I think it's like someone who says,
yeah, and they're really. And they're back in. They're really enjoying all the changes, and now they're getting excited for the expansion. So I think Blizzard has done this pretty
I mean,
well.
I've seen a lot of stuff where people have said, like, oh, I quit playing the first 2 weeks. I never even beat normal difficulty or something like that because the loot I was finding was garbage and all this other stuff. And they're like, I'm playing now, and I've actually leveled a character up to 60, and I'm working through the difficulty levels, and it's actually a lot of fun because, like removing out the normal Nightmare Hell Inferno thing, even though that was the nostalgic D2, and everyone was kind of upset about that when they removed it. But it's more when you think about it. Yeah, I wasn't. But and that's kind of thing too, where I look at it is that I'm like, it is a third game, and there's a lot of things where everyone's like, well, in D2 they did this, and it's like, well, this is Diablo 3. It's not Diablo 2. And it's kind of like they're trying to go through and they're trying to change things. They're trying to pull things from D2 that were good from it, but not necessarily just making a carbon copy of it because someone wants D2 with fancy graphics. But I think for, just in general, like, it's bringing back those people, and they're rewarding them with, better loot drops. They're actually seeing a legendary, within their first, couple hours of play, pretty much guaranteed, as opposed to never seeing a legendary for like 2 weeks when the game first came out practically, and it's kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, not every legendary that drops now is better than the rares you're already using.
Yeah.
I've melted plenty of them, but compared to release, and I've gone back like 8 topics here, but at release, not only did you only see a legendary every couple of weeks, but it was always awful. Like I've seen a ton. Like I was saying, earlier, that it's really easy to gear up, especially for the character you're already on, and if you're just dipping a toe into Loot 2.0, it's like a shower of goodies. But even when there's something that is not, I mean, there are just bad rolls still, obviously, and to some extent being able to hit, I think, the default's control and see the ranges that something can roll might help with this psychologically. I've gotten a lot of items, especially legendaries, that were not particularly good, but I could see that it was the random number generator screwing me, and they could have been good. And that's an incentive to keep playing. One more drop, and this will be the one that actually is good. Before it was just sort of hopeless.
If only there was some way to actually fix that item to make it to re-roll some of those stats.
It's like you could talk to someone and say, "Hey, can you make this stat better?"
And that someone is Jay Wilson. So last topic, briefly. This is almost our 17th anniversary of Diablo Inc. Gamers. Obviously, it wasn't always called Diablo Inc. Gamers. It was called Diablo Reality X, something like that, back in forever ago, when Ellie was first doing the site about Diablo 1. And before mine as well, happily. And actually, I was sort of assisting her a little bit before it became DiabloII.net, or as people call it, D2Net. People were like, "Woo, that was the site! I remember that site forever ago." So I think people obviously read the site today and don't even know that was the site back in the old days. And it's been around forever. I mean, I haven't been working on it every day for 16 years or whatever, but I mean, on and off. There were years, but I was gone for a few years a couple times. But it's fun back in Diablo 3, and it's kind of weird. I mean, that's damn near most of the internet's existence. I mean, obviously the internet was around in the 80s on some government computers in universities, but I mean, one of the very first websites I ever looked at regularly was Ellie's old website for Hellfire. Was when I first looked at it. Because I mean, I was like, there is not a website anywhere that has information about new items in Hellfire, which was the Diablo 1 expansion. Oh, here's one, and it's in this being run from a computer gaming store back when they still had computer gaming stores.
Those are the best websites. The websites that were in like your spare Linux computer that you had sitting in your room that was running off of your 56K or something, or ISDN.
It was on a computer in there. Ellie and Paul had a computer time, a computer lab place, rental space. What are these called? Computer
LAN centers,
internet shops. Yeah, it's so long ago I don't even know what they were called, but I mean that was like before there was internet gaming even. So it was just. Yeah, they weren't called that then. It was forever ago. But I mean, yeah, and then she still has versions of the old site you can look up. You can look on Web Archive and see these like, oh
everything
my God, that was the internet.
GIF back then, or else it wasn't a cool website.
And it would take 4 minutes to load a 26.4
I'm not
baud or
supposed
something.
to talk about work on the podcast, so I'll go into no details. But I learned the other day that the Internet Archive site only goes back to about mid-1996.
So long after this website was even around. Barely. Yeah, that was about Diablo 1 time. So yeah, it's basically as old as an Internet Archive
Yeah,
site. But
our
so yeah, we have
our
and I don't
guild
even.
our guild or clan has been around since 1998, which isn't as long, but it's not bad.
Yeah, I was going to ask you on that because obviously you've had an affiliation that's longer than most, and it's. Obviously, there was a long time in Diablo 2 where there was kind of it wasn't super busy for 7 years or something, and then reborn in Diablo 3, but of course they didn't really have clan support in the game initially, so. You've been part of this community on and off forever. I mean, it's weird to think of a website. I mean, it's a community sort of. There's people in the forums who have 10,000 posts, and our forum system died a few times. Otherwise, there'd be people with 100,000 posts and stuff. But it goes on for so long, and the technology changes, and the web, even the URL changes. But it's interesting to think of. I'm not a real community joiner kind of person generally, but it is interesting to feel like you're part of something that's been sort of this virtual thing for so long. And you're both like, yeah, good point.
Well,
I'm missing
I mean,
Diablo.
I went to the Diablo II was a big thing for me back in the Diablo 2 days. So it was just
Weren't you in like fifth
I
grade then
was
or
in
something?
college. So it was in it Diablo 2 came out when I was working my summer job after I graduated high school. So yeah.
Oh, you're not as young as I thought. Thank God. Well, your avatar picture looks like you're about 17 now, so that's an upgrade. Maybe you're just
Yeah,
youthful,
Yeah.
like Elijah
Yeah,
would. You'll be
pretty
a hobbit forever.
much.
yeah, and there's a whole community around Blizzard games as a whole that goes to BlizzCon, the other conventions, and then even just gaming is much more of a community and out in the public space thing now, and less of a back from college in your parents' basement sort of activity. But I think those long running web-based communities like the gamers message board, or even maybe some of the more famous and long-running YouTube channels, are a really great. I almost want to say like breeding ground, like sort of in between, where as gaming become more mainstream, people become more comfortable meeting people from the internet, and then there was the whole online dating thing, obviously. I've been around a long time and seen a lot of changes, and so also a lot of old friends and sister organizations have gone by the wayside because the internet and gaming have changed so much, and sometimes some people are more comfortable with change than others, I guess. It's like living in the future, though.
It's I guess that's our final topic. We're gonna have a couple of articles. 17th anniversary is not exactly a round number. We like these things to be divisible by fives or zeros in our current system of numerals. So it's not a huge deal, but it is kind of interesting that is the Reaper of Souls Diablo 3 expansion's finally coming out, and I first started reading Diablo site when it was the Diablo 1 expansion was coming out. So here I am today.
That was
And
the
now I'll go kill
expansion that
myself
let
because
you
I'm going
run in
nowhere in my
town,
life.
right?
It wasn't really run. It gave
Only
you
with
like an extra case of Red Bulls. Yeah,
double
and you
speed
just
walk.
Walk
you
less
were.
slowly.
It was
And you're,
or what was it? Wall Power Walker or Mall Power Walker mode.
and your little
Yeah,
feet
you were
went
just
really,
like.
really fast. Yeah, and then we had about a 3-year wait for Diablo 2, and then we had a 50-year wait for Diablo 3, and we've just finally gotten Diablo 3 now, and it came out 4 days ago. So anyway, we obviously didn't have a podcast back then because there was no audio on the internet for the first 12 years. But
You could have written it.
technology
It would have been a
changes and
text
moves
podcast.
on. Yeah, you'd have had to read it one letter at a time, though, one
chat
vowel at a time,
channel.
like a synthesizer.
Yeah.
Anyway, you've listened to the Diablo 3 podcast, Reaper of Souls podcast on DiabloGamers.com, and we're really, really old. We're almost old enough to drink legally in several countries now. And thanks for listening and enjoying V 2.0 3-.2310.
Yes.
And it's much improved. And as we always say,
Moo.
Oh.
Moo. Moo.